African Methodist Episcopal youth, depending on Christ to achieve success. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, the New King James Version. This world is a scary place. All of my life, things have been happening that can make you feel so insecure. We have had a worldwide economic crisis caused by corporate greed. An endless war on terrorism has been going since before I was born. And every year, someone with a gun or a knife hurts us with senseless killing. However, in Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, God reminds us that in spite of all else, he is in control. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. God promises he will never leave us alone. And for that reason, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. As a young person, I know that God has given me the ability to do great things. I also know that I can do much more when I do things with Christ. But that is what I believe my generation has not learned. Some teenagers do drugs because they feel they have no talent. Some join gangs because they feel alone. And some commit suicide because they think that no one loves them and that there is no hope. But I am here to remind everyone, young and old, that God has never left us, and that he is always with us, especially when times get hard. When you're backed into a corner, remember that you find your way out through the power of prayer through Christ Jesus. When you are bullied at school, when your loved ones have passed on, or when you feel that the world is against you, remember that God is always on your side. Because of this, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. One way God takes care of us is to send strong men of faith to lead and guide us. My father is a strong man of faith. The men of my church are strong men of faith. And because of them, I have grown to become the intellectual youth that stands before you. One such man in the AME church who came at a time when America suffered from the sickness of slavery was Richard Allen. Richard Allen was a minister, an educator, and a writer. He was born into slavery in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and bought his freedom. In 1816, he founded the first national black church in the United States. Not only did Richard Allen fight against racial inequality, he was considered the grandfather of the civil rights movement. He founded the AME Church to express most profoundly that we are all God's children, and that the sacrifice of Jesus' death is salvation for us all. Even though Richard Allen knew that his church would be the victim of hate directed at African Americans, he still fought to lead us in faith and worship by establishing this AME Church. He was God's servant, sent to do God's will, to make real the promise that we are all God's children, and that he would never leave us alone. And because of this service, because of this sacrifice, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. Then God sent us Martin Luther King Jr. at a time when America was in a bad place. African Americans were denied the most basic rights, the right to vote, and the right to decent accommodations. We had to settle for segregated schools that were substandard. Our buildings and our books were worn and torn, yet God provided us with excellent teachers that made us shine. Yes, we had to suffer the indignities of being treated as inferior, but God sent us a man with a dream who stood up to this injustice and who fought for what he knew was right in the eyes of God. When he marched in Alabama, when he marched in Mississippi, when he told us about his dream in Washington, D.C., when he felt weakened by constant threats and criticisms, he knew that God was with him and that God promised to never leave him. No, never leave him alone. He too could do all things through Christ, which strengthened him. I have been a part of the AME Church my entire life. Through the tough times and through the good, AME has always been with me. This church is the foundation of my entire being. And as I go out into the world and continue my education, I know that I represent not just me, not just my family, but the teachings and principles of the AME Church, and I will represent it proudly. So even though these are trying times, I know that God is with us, and that through him, we can do all things. Like Richard Allen, we as AME youth must not shy away from the challenges of our times. God's agents are not only present in history, but they are with us today in our parents, our teachers, our church families, and our mentors. With God as our compass, we can realize our goals, our dreams, our aspirations. With diligence, resilience, determination, and gratitude, we must be prepared to be his agents. We must be prepared to make a difference in our communities. We can do all things through Christ, which strengthens us. I am an African Methodist Episcopal youth, depending on Christ to achieve success. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me.